everybody here. I've raised kids, I can out-talk it, so I'm not worried about it. It was interesting to watch today because a lot of our focus has been on the supplier-customer relationship, and that's a huge part of supply chain. But I want to take a little bit different perspective in our 45 minutes here to kind of stretch the definition of supply chain a little bit here and have you think a little bit differently here. So, when you look at when David held up the arch, it's one thing to be able to manufacture a part. That's a whole set of skills. But there's a whole other set of skills we need from a supply chain standpoint, and that's the coordination of resources to get a job done. And I come out of industry like Barry does right now, out of a purchasing background. And in my case, I flipped over to education because I got caught up in the dot-com bust. And Monday, Chuck promises his son to help with college, and Tuesday, Chuck's out of a job, and Wednesday, I came into education. So here I am. And but I want you to think about that idea of it's one thing to be able to make the product I've got. It's another thing to be able to coordinate resources to get a job done. And so when we look at supply chain, it's more than a buzzword. I'm going to show you one of the tools that we use from an educational standpoint, but I want you walking away with some questions I'd love to have you ask back at work at the same time. Also, when we think about supply chain, what we look at is kind of this picture right here. If I'm in sales, what kind of commitments do I need to make to my customer to take care of the customer? And then we back up the conversation to the supply chain, which is our folks that do the purchasing, folks that do the scheduling, folks that do inventory management. And based on what we promise the customer, what do I got to do in inventory and scheduling to support those commitments? And then we back it up a little bit further into the factory to say, so how do I got to set up my factory to meet those inventory commitments and scheduling commitments? And then we back it up one more time into purchasing to say, okay, what do I got to do to get my suppliers lined up to be able to support this whole thing? So when we look at supply chain away from the product, we tend to look at this whole idea of coordination of resources to get a job done. Does that make sense? Totally different aspect. It's another side of the coin back at work. The two questions I want to ask you, and whether you're in manufacturing or distribution, transportation, folks are here from the college at the same time here, nonprofits, we've all got supply chains. We've all got a sales part of our business. We've all got a supply chain management part of it. Someone's got to coordinate resources back in an organization. We all have an operations that has to perform the task. We've all got suppliers in some fashion. So here's my question for you. Not a business strategy. It's a legitimate question, and I didn't come up with it myself. I stole it from a magazine, but profound question. Not a business strategy, not an operations strategy. How many of you with a show of hands would say, I know what our supply chain strategy is? Raise your hands. And take a look. Raise them high. Not many of us. Okay. CFO magazine came out with an article about 2 years ago. I did it with Gartner Group, and they said that companies lose, waste, whatever you want to call it, about 40% of our direct and indirect labor dollars because we don't have a supply chain strategy. So do the math in your head what you're spending for labor, direct and indirect, take 40% of it, and that's what we're losing because we don't have a strategy. The second part, what I ask people myself is, and again, ask the question back at work, what's our supply chain strategy? And if they're unclear, ask them in simpler terms, how many of you know where north on the compass is for our business in our supply chain? Okay? We're great for cliches as educators. I apologize. People get that question. Here's the second part of it. The professional question is, how many of you know or don't know, or on a scale of 1 to 10, would say the decisions we make day to day are aligned with the strategy? Probably none of us, because only 2 hands went up. Okay. The simpler question ends up being, if I asked you on a scale of 1 to 10 and shout it out, it's not outwards here, but on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really aligned, or how many of you think your company, everybody is rowing the boat and playing in the sandbox together nicely in the same direction? What would you say on 1 to 10? It's a loaded question. I know I walk out of Wausau in about 2 hours. You got to live with each other here. What would you say? Scale of 1 to 10. I got a discrete 6, maybe 7.
1.
1.
6. Mid.
4 or 5. My point being is there's tremendous opportunities when we step back and look at our business and not just look at the product part of it, but to step back and say, do we have that coordination of resources across the supply chain? Okay, there's a huge opportunity for us. So what I want to show you here is a tool that I use in my training. It's called the Fresh Connection. I make orange juices. Previous management teams have been fired. And we've got 4 roles here: sales, supply chain, operations, and purchasing. Our goal is to turn this company around. And what I'm really interested in showing you here is the kind of decisions that you've got to be thinking about. We use this in supply chain classes here. And I'll say this too, in terms of plugging the college here, because I work for myself. I'll say it softly here. I live across the river, across the St. Croix, in the unmentionable state. But they've done a great job here. They've got an online certification certificate program in supply chain logistics. They've got all the education in place that you need. They're building the local resources because they recognize this conversation that we've got to capture this educational piece. So I'd encourage you to look up Barb, Sarah, Ming, what I'd like to do in the simulation, just kind of show you some of the decisions. The nice thing about simulation and training is you can learn, you can blow up the company, and guess what? You can go back to work when it's done. You haven't damaged your business. And there's some profound universal elements to supply chain. When I first did this here for the college, I was with 3M here. They're crushing rock for asphalt and everything else. And I'm bringing in orange juice into the class. And for the first time, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what did I do? But they got the universal principles. I've done this with people that are machinists that haven't gotten past a high school education, and they get the idea of universal principles in managing the supply chain. So I'm going to sneak over here in front of the computer here. I'm going to show you this company. We've got 3 customers here, and this is our income statement. If you want to scoot down a bit, you're welcome to. I'll kind of make the screen a little bit bigger, which I have no idea how I will do. Control S?
Plus.
Control plus. I'm a touchpad person. Oh, look at that. Cool. So, this company's got 3 customers. Big customer is like a Cub, Ivy. Other customers like an Aldi's. One's like a Dominick's. But here's what's going on in the company. I've got sales of $2.8 million. I'm paying penalties of $309,000 because I'm late to the customer. My raw materials are costing me $900,000, and my production costs are $487,000. So if you go down a couple lines, gross margin, we're making $1.1 billion out of manufacturing. We better make money from manufacturing, otherwise we're in trouble. But when I start taking out all the other costs, and you start looking down, all of a sudden we see when I get to the bottom line, my profits minus $339,000. So this company's losing money. We've been hired as a community team to turn this sucker around, make it profitable. And we're going to get paid, I don't know, make it up, $20 million for the next half hour's work if you can turn it around. How's that for incentive? So you got a half an hour to turn this company around. What would you do first? And I'll do what you tell me. Anybody go the cats? I don't think start. This is just a huge task.
Work on the penalty.
Work on the penalties? Okay. Penalties come because we're late to the customer. What we promised and what we delivered are 2 different things. So let me show you real quick. So I'll jump into the sales tab. And again, just to give you a sense of these, not so much the simulation, but these are the types of decisions you and I have to be making back at work. Here's our promises to the customers. We promise this food and groceries, we will ship 95% on time based on order lines. Shelf life, 75%. Our orange juice has got a 20-week shelf life. we promise them when we ship to them tomorrow, we ship the next day, it'll be fresh for at least 75% of that 20 weeks. 15 weeks, which means me back in the supply chain, I only got 5 weeks for what? To get it built, get it stocked, and out the door. I could promise my customer 80%, but what did I just do to myself? If I promise the customer 80%, 16 weeks.
Your penalties.
Yeah, and I got my factory mad at me too because I just took a week out of their lead time because of what I promised. How many of you have those kind of conversations back at work between sales and operations? They're not giving each other the evil eye. Those are the kind of things we're challenged with in the supply chain and why we need to collaborate. Oh, by the way, you can place your order up till 8 p.m. at night, and we'll ship it the next day. They buy by the pallet layer. They pay us in 4 weeks. Middle short horizon promotional pressures like a weekly grocery ad. So we promise the customer 95%. Let's look at how, and we do it across all 3 customers. Let's see how we perform. Third column, 89, 90, 91%. So we promise 95, we did 91%. So what are my choices to fix that? Would be one argument I can Yeah, let's dial it back to 90%. Let's cut the bleed until we can get our arms around what's going on. That's one legitimate argument.
Reduce your suppliers.
Reduce my suppliers lead time. And they find themselves also saying, what's going on in the factory? Anybody else saying, heck, I want more information before I decide? Come forward. And that's how we end up making decisions day to day because we don't have a structure in place to have these conversations. So let's take a quick peek back here for a second. Let's go back and look real quick. So we're 90% on time. I'm going to go into supply chain. Let me show you some of the decisions we make here. In supply chain, we make decisions on safety stock of raw materials, lot size of raw materials. On the product side, we make decisions on safety stocks. This software comes out of the Netherlands, and I've never heard the term. I'm told it's a European term, production interval. 10 means we make up to 10 days worth every 10 days. So it's a little touch of how often we make it, touch of lot size. But we're also making decisions on lead time in production here. But let's take a look at our finished goods. Maybe we're late because stuff's not getting the finished goods. So here's a picture of my finished goods. Each round we play is 6 months. Yesterday is the 120th day. So what's it look like to you? No consistency, high variability in demand. And what's happening every time that picture flatlines at the bottom is that same. Because that's stock levels. I'm out. So it could be my promises are too high. Could also be stuff's not finished goods. Is everybody seeing that? So let's take it a step further back even and say, okay, let's go look at the components. Maybe stuff's not getting the finished goods because I'm not getting raw materials in. So here's my picture of my raw materials. Doesn't look like I'm ever running out, except for which one? PET bottles, PET bottles. Roll this for a second. Those are the PET bottles. Okay. Pretty tough to build. I don't have raw materials. And in fact, if I take a look right up on top here, this column here, first column is here's my supplier reliability. Here's my on time with my suppliers. Here's my component availability. What does that tell us? I look at delivered reliability and component availability. If you're Mary and Mary's your purchasing manager, she looks at you and sees that first column. What kind of conversation she having with you? Chuck, I'm not happy with vitamin C. How can it be 0.5% on time? Mary also may look at oranges and say, okay, they're 98% on time, but I've got 98.1 in complete availability. Supplier's doing okay. Maybe we need some more safety stock until my supplier gets better. So I got lots of stuff going on in the factory. If I look at the... Was that me? So let's look in the factory for a second here. I'm not doing any preventative maintenance. I'm not doing any breakdown training. I'm not doing any setup reduction. Okay. If I look in my warehouse, oops. I'm almost overbooked in my inbound warehouse. I'm using Jack's warehouse down the road for 10% of my overflow. If I look in my factory, I'm only hitting my production schedule 78% of the time. Okay. If I go back to purchasing, and here's my suppliers. I'm in the Netherlands. Here's where my supply base is. My 1 liter bottles comes from France by truck. My PET bottles come from Spain, 10-day lead time. My oranges come from Miami in the US, 30 days away. My mangoes come from Spain by truck. My vitamin C comes from the Netherlands, 4 days away. So what do I fix? Where do you start this conversation? I realize I'm feeding you a fire. So usually we get, if you come into the class, we've got you for 24 hours, so we're kind of collapsing the organization down that day. But
several things.
I'm sorry?
There's several things.
Yeah, there's several things. Could be what?
It could be when you get your supplies.
Yep.
All of them, not just one, two.
Could be the timing of it. Could be the intake time. Could be the lot size.
Production schedule.
Production schedule. Yeah, here we're building a product every 10 days, but if the customer wants it quicker.
Your on-time performance from vendors.
On-time performance, maybe it's another supplier. Yeah, could be inventory levels on the raw materials. So lots of different places. And we also said could lower the promise to the customer. Now, from a supply chain standpoint, when we teach in the class and we do our education, typically what we do is we throw you to the wolves right away in the first round and kind of sandbag. We don't tell you what's going on because it's an experiential learning thing. But more often than not, when people kind of step back and realize after the first round of play is that first question that says, what's our supply chain strategy? Are we trying to be the Walmart of orange juice? Or am I trying to be the Rolex of orange juice? What's my strategy? Because once I know, and it comes out of the business strategy, but once I know what side of that conversation we're going to fall on, then I know what I have to do with my supply chain. Because if we're saying that, you know what, we want to be known for flexibility or reliability, then I'm working with my suppliers to make sure they can support that. Be it location like we're talking here, or smaller lots more often, okay, quick response manufacturing. I don't want somebody that sets up and just cranks out 30 days worth because we're misaligned at that point. So the ultimate question I wanted to have you walk away thinking about is those first two questions I talked about, is go back and start having that conversation with folks saying, what is our supply chain strategy? Is the strategy in support of what we're trying to do as a business? And then drive it down into the areas, the types of decisions to say, as we set safety stock, production intervals, how we're going to inventory, what space we're going to have, what's going to be our intake time from dock to stock, all these tactical decisions, they have to be in alignment with the strategy. Otherwise, it's going to cost us. Okay? And that's the other side of manufacturing. Coming back to the beginning, it's one thing to be able to make, a structured aluminum extrusion. It's another thing to coordinate resources to get a job done. And they live hand in hand with each other. Okay? So, pick one real quick, just for the sake of the fun of showing you. We'll see if we blow up the business or not. Where would you go first? Should we lower the promise, or should we fix something in the factory, or do one of both? I'm sorry?
Fix the factory.
Fix the factory. Okay. Where?
78% covered up.
Okay. So let's take a look at the bodily line here for a quick second. I'm not doing any preventive maintenance, good or bad. So here's your two choices. I love this, whoever the creator was. A little or a lot. It's nice to know programmers have a sense of humor.
Start with a little.
A little? Okay. Now, as you play the simulation, you can go behind the scenes and say, here's what it's going to cost me, here's what it's going to save me, and that information's there. Part of what's fun about the educational aspect of supply chain is we get a chance also to wrestle with the trade-offs that go on in supply chain. There is no, and I know it's going to sound like a cliche, but I experienced it, there's no free lunch in supply chain or manufacturing. Every decision has got a trade-off. And so we're either using quick response or lean to break the trade-off, or we're figuring out how we're going to mitigate it, or what's going to be kind of our guideline for that thing. But again, I put us on the spot and say, how many of us really take the time to incorporate that into our work lives and have these kinds of conversations to make sure we're pointed north on the compass. So, breakdown training, Lean says what? Machine breaks down, we want our frontline operators to be able to fix the breakdown.
Yes.
Lean would say yes. Setup reduction?
Yes.
Okay. Increased speed, we're not beating up people. That's line optimization, better combinations. You will get about 10% more output by looking at how you schedule.
Chuck, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
It's easy to check boxes, but do you throw anything in there with costs associated with these activities?
Yeah, there's in the reports, and then you go into the info center, all the costs are behind the scenes. You can pull it out, and then from a teaching standpoint, whether it's myself or whoever, that's where you part training with it at the same time.
Typical ROIs, those activities?
No, this is an amalgamation of a lot of companies that they built this with. I think if you go back to the Score Council from Apex, you have the score model, and the Supply Chain Council does a lot of benchmarking out there of comparable industries. The question then becomes, is it worth you and I to drop 25 grand to get that benchmarking data at that point?
Okay.
So let's look at the inbound warehouse. I've got 900 pallet locations, 5 full-time employees. My intake time is 5 days. So it comes in the dock, it doesn't get put away for 5 days. Probably should be what? 1, 2. I'll put 1. It's probably why the last management team got fired. I've got 5 employees on the inbound warehouse. If I look at the outbound warehouse, I got 4 employees. So let's look at how many hours I'm looking at. So I got 5 employees working 40 hours a week, 200 hours on the raw materials warehouse. My 5 employees are only working 75. If I'm looking at that picture, probably never going higher than what? 110? I'm looking at the graph roughly.
So that's like direct hours?
Yes, just in the warehouse, not even the factory floor. That's just your incoming warehouse.
Your employee utilization is an average of 75 hours
Out of 200. And I got 4 employees on the finished goods side at 40 hours, only working 100 on average. How many want a job? You only got to work 15 hours a week.
Reduce your staff in warehouse, it's not value added, put them into production.
Yeah, could turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to go with 3 people. What else should we look at here? Let's go back into sales real quick. We promised everybody 95%. We're hitting 90. Let's drop the commitment just a little bit. So instead of 95%, let's bring it down to the 89% that we performed at. I'm going to hit the calculate for a second. Watch this contract index, because this is where it gets cool in class. This is not a price. This is a multiplier. So I can't renegotiate with the customer and beat them up for price. This multiplier is saying the customer is saying, I'm willing to pay you 1.0085 times the normal price based on the promises you made. So if I drop 95 to 89%, I'll get rid of penalties. But what do you suppose the customer is going to say? Fine, you can deliver 89%, but I want what? I want a concession. And look at the multiplier. 82% of normal there. But that's where you get into wonderful conversations. I'm not just saying educationally, but necessary conversations back at work. What do we want to do? How do we want to run our business? It's got to be in support of the strategy and that stuff. Because I could very easily be a finance person, and I got a bachelor's in accounting, and I could look at that and say, well, okay, we give her penalties, just drop to 89%. Salespersons have a core in there. Be saying, what? Well, we'll lose that customer if we do that. Well, what's the answer? Well, how do we want to run our business? And step back and have those conversations. So let me lock it in just for the moment here. So we had the comment, let's change inventories here. We're running out of product. Okay. So I'm running out of darn near everything. If I look at the picture, flat line, flat line, flat line, flat line, flat line. So Chuck doesn't understand supply chain. I'll just go in and say, well, let's go into the product and let's increase safety stocks from 3 to 4 weeks. What do you think? I could. I see the jump right behind me. Just no way. Because if I increase from 3 to 4, what do I run into the risk of? Overflowing the warehouse, which could cost me. Expiration, loss, spoilers, because right now we promise 15 of the 20 weeks to the customer. I got the other 5. If I look at the numbers right now, I'm building up to 10 days worth every 10 days, which worst case could be what? 2 weeks of stock plus 3 weeks of safety stock. I'm bumping up against 5 right now. And another week, I'm guaranteed to build something that I'm gonna throw away. Okay. So what type of decisions, if we step back, we've never answered the question, what kind of strategies we take into this? It was part of my sandbagging with you, is I forced you to make decisions right away in isolation or silence, but never could come back and ask the first question, where we compete, low cost, or responsiveness. And so we go off and make our best intentions based on what we know, and we don't have a unified strategy here. It looks like we're trying to do what? What does it feel like? Low cost, efficient, set up, run, or responsiveness, or maybe even either.
Sounds like stay afloat.
Stay afloat? Yeah, and you'll see a lot of companies will do that. They'll turn around and get the quarterly statements. They'll react to this number here, and we don't come back and ask it. Okay? So let me just take what we got right here, and I'm going to hit the calculate button, and then I'll hit my final comments and capture some questions from you. Are you sure you want to calculate? So we'll let this thing run for a minute. I guess, to kind of finish up, and I'll capture questions, we are potentially looking at using this for education here. I use it myself here, but I think the bigger issue for me becomes, as I come out as a practitioner background, and even from an educational standpoint, I don't see a lot of us stepping back and saying, do we have a supply chain strategy and is it in support of it? And that's a great theoretical question. But when I start seeing research out there that says below 40% labor dollar, that's pretty tough to get back just from increased sales. And we get a lot of this going on in our organizations because we kind of encounter with each other. So making it a part of our S&O, our sales and operations planning process, or demand planning process, or our monthly forecasting process, to say, we all aligned and make decisions, and we know what our strategy is, and what do we have to do to tweak it, is a huge opportunity for us in the company. It parallels lean opportunities in my mind, because every dollar we save, think about it, we got a 3% profit margin, and I save $1 on this stuff, it's $33 in sales I don't have to go out and get to make up for that dollar because I'm misaligned. I think there's huge opportunities for us. I'm excited hearing the conversations today, just sitting outside of it, because I think there's huge opportunities for us to work with our suppliers, especially to be able to prototype process improvement here. Because we're only as good as our suppliers are, and we've seen that coming out of the quality. So we're all dying to see what this thing, if we made money or blew it up. Yeah, questions?
Do you run into any resistance? I don't think anybody here makes orange juice.
All the time.
My parallel to that is when a lot of companies lay out, go out there with lean principles to the shop floor, we'll utilize things like Lego systems.
Yep.
We don't make
They're worthless.
Yeah.
Here's where I fall in that conversation. Whether you make to order, make to stock, doesn't matter. To me, there's some universal laws in operations. Supply versus demand. I got 15 customers, wants 20. Bottom line is what? I need 5 more. I can bark about forecasts and everything else. Once I know that, then the second question becomes, what's my lead time versus customer lead time? Customer wants those 5 pieces in 10 days, and it takes me 20 days. My choice is either what? Overtime or something. I'm going to carry inventory. And then it's a question of capacity if I got resources. So I think when you couch it in those terms, it doesn't matter whether you make to order, make to stock. They're kind of universal things. And I think it's simple. It simplifies. It makes decision making back at work much more straightforward. We can argue why I got the extra 5 or don't have it, but the bottom line still what? I need 5 more. So how do we do? Went from minus 8.56 to minus 4.78. Got rid of penalties, but my revenue went down. Good decision or bad decision? Penalties went down by 391,000. So I gained back 391. Sales went down 250. Financially, good decision, because I came out ahead. Organizationally, I might get people crabby at me though, because I'm now sacrificing commitments to customers for the sake of financial statement. So when we look at supply chain, management or strategy, I guess the thing I want you to walk away with, and I'll finish up here, is think about coordination of resources to get a job done. I know I said it about 5 times, that was intentional. But I think there's huge opportunities to improve. And not saying it gratuitously, but building local suppliers and coalitions like you are makes life a whole heck of a lot easier. Because if I'm going to improve, I got to work with my suppliers. If they're local, it's much easier. And again, it's a cliche, but we got our lessons out of quality. I worked for a company that made flexes for paper feeds for copiers. Xerox was our customer. Xerox came to us and said, starting a year from now, we want 300 parts per billion better or less, or you're not our supplier. And so we went out, did our measurements, looked at all our suppliers, and everybody was at about 1,000 parts per million. And so we figured out, I got 2 choices. I either better find the other 700, good luck, or I better improve my suppliers. I'm as good as my suppliers in terms of quality. And that was one of our big lessons. We have the same thing in supply chain, is we're only as good as all the other elements in the supply chain. And so taking on a role like right now to work with partner locally is going to have a huge impact. And if we can stretch it across all four sales, supply chain, operations, our suppliers, then we got the opportunity to strengthen utilization. Okay. And then the last piece is looking in terms of every decision we got a trade-off. We either do a lean to break it, or what's going to be our trade-offs to live with it. Okay. Huge opportunity for us. So I don't have any other things I want to add. Questions? Like I said, I'm excited on behalf of the college because they've got a full supply chain program going here. And I encourage you to take a peek. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Peggy comes down to the next speaker. I just want to, while the topic is hot, in your folders, you have a follow-up workshop to this. We're all about introducing this concept of what are those next steps. It's a supply chain workshop. We have a webinar coming up on February 11th, and then 2 face-to-face sessions coming up in March. Encourage you to sign up if you wanted all 3 of those different sessions. Some valuable discussion we'll have. We actually ran the fresh simulation, as Chuck was talking about. We ran a kind of a pilot project late last fall, and it went excellent. Great feedback. Had about 20 people in the room, introduced the concept. We're thinking those folks are coming back for some additional workshops. So obviously, if this was a passion or if this hit a nerve with you, feel free to join us for these workshops. Chuck's going to be our presenter, and we're going to dive deeper into this topic. So keep that in mind as you continue on your day today. So thank you. I believe you're going to introduce our next speaker, correct?
Yeah.
Thanks for sticking with us here today. Last but not least, we want to introduce Connie Loden. Connie is the Senior Project Manager for New North, which is a partner region, Fox Valley area, Green Bay, Appleton. Connie is actively involved in the supply chain marketplace. It's been created in the New North region. The partner providers that come together to do this workshop and to talk about what we might need to do in the region are considering this model and would like to pursue it, but need your support in doing that to make sure it's the right thing for you. But we hope that when you hear about what New North has done and why they've done it, it will be something you'd like us to embrace and work together on. So, Connie?
Thank you, Peggy. Yes, I am Senior Project Manager with New North. New North is the 18-county regional economic development organization in the northeast portion of the state. Covers kind of from Sheboygan, Fond du Lac counties north to the Upper Peninsula border. So pretty large territory, but definitely has some major communities within that too, as she mentioned. The Fox Valley area of Appleton, Green Bay, you've got Oshkosh, Fond du Lac itself, and then the Lakeshore region as well. We started embarking on the supply chain marketplace as a result of the downturn from Oshkosh contracting with Department of Defense. When Department of Defense was making some cuts, they cut some of their contracting, and Oshkosh Corporation, which was making some of their military vehicles, got hit pretty hard with that. Lost about 1,500 jobs. It was about a $91 million impact in wages for the region. So a very big hit to the economy in that particular area. And not only did it hit Oshkosh itself, but all the suppliers that fed into that OEM were substantially hit as well. So as a result, the Department of Defense came in with some assistance through their Office of Economic Assistance adjustment for those offsets to their contracting ups and downs. And the main purpose of this was really to keep some of those suppliers stronger so that they could weather those ups and downs in the defense contracting. Diversify their customer base so they weren't so dependent just on that defense contract and could instead expand beyond that. And then when defense contracting picked back up, the suppliers were still available. So the funding that came from that was about $1.8 million to the region. A lot of that went to a variety of different programs and intentions for growing the economy, some in growing the aviation sector because you had Oshkosh there with EAA, and that was an asset to capitalize on the university systems and some of their research in that particular area, accelerator programs for entrepreneurs and business startups, and some regional planning for coordinating economic development efforts. And then some of the other program elements that I'm more working within and more familiar with are some of the programs that were specifically to support those suppliers. So Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation had some loan funds that could be applied to those suppliers that took that hit. Wisconsin Manufacturers Extension Partnership also can provide technical assistance, and they're still looking for companies who might have experienced some impact from that contract up and down. And even if they didn't, as long as they were a supplier or did some contracting with Marinette Marine or Oshkosh Corporation, you can still tap into Wisconsin Manufacturing Extension Partnerships technical assistance for helping to get some of the certifications that you might need to explore different markets, some lean manufacturing technical assistance in terms of improving your operations, but a number of those technical assistance elements that WMEP can provide. So in your packets, there is an 8.5 by 11 sheet that talks a little bit about the supply chain marketplace, but on the back of that, it tells you how to get in touch with WMEP or WEDC if you are interested in some of that other technical assistance programming that they can provide to those who have been contractors to the defense industry. So, and where we came in through New North was to provide the build out of the supply chain marketplace and map some of that supply chain that fed into Oshkosh Corporation. So as part of that, we built out the supply chain marketplace. Some might have been familiar with the Windworks, Wisconsin Windworks, which had been a New North project to really disassemble what goes into wind towers in the wind industry in terms of what are all the components, pieces, parts that make that, that go into that industry, and informing those manufacturers within the state, here are some opportunities that if you have the capabilities to fit into or provide those parts, those electrical components, etc., here's a directory from which we can take a supply chain to market, and took that to the energy conferences, other trade shows that related to Windworks or to the wind industry, to really put in front of that industry, here's a supply chain all ready for you. So this was based on that same concept, the supply chain marketplace, but instead of it being just Windworks or just the defense industry, and particularly because we wanted to explore other industries those suppliers could go into, we looked at how do you allow a business to have one profile, enter that once, but if they have the capabilities in multiple industries, be able to be found in any of those directories. So our technical web builder built that background platform that allows you to do that. A company enters one profile. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to enter your company business information. And then it can be found in any of those industry directories that you feel your components and pieces and parts might fit within. And the best part is it's free. So there's no cost to a business to get into this, to the marketplace at this point in time, thanks to the funding through Department of Defense.
So I'm going to walk you around what that tool looks like. There's a number of ways you can get to it through the New North website, or we have a direct URL, Wisconsin Supply Chain Marketplace as well. And then the third URL at the bottom is for it goes directly to the company profile sign-up page and for you to enter your company information. So if you go to the marketplace through the New North website, there's a number of ways to get to that through business intelligence and the target industries and directories page that way, or right in the prominent target industries and directories on the middle of the home page. Also through site selectors, as this also puts we talked a little bit about, or I heard people talking about, if we could group that and show people the supply chain that we have here, that might be very helpful in attracting companies that need that kind of supply chain. So for site selectors as well, you can get to that through targeted industries and directories. So the supply chain marketplace landing page is off of that particular landing page. And on this page, you get a list of the various different industry directories that we have. You can enter your company profile by clicking that button. If you already have a profile in the directory, you can edit your profile. And you can also post industry news. If you have a request for proposal or a request for quotes, you can also enter that. Then you can also look to see what proposals, requests are out there as well and respond to them. So variety of industries that we've started with, aviation, energy systems, food and beverage, water industry. Although we weren't looking to promote the defense industry, since we already have the supply chain in that, we might as well put that forward as well and make sure that people know what we have here. And this directory can also be aggregated by geographic location. And so the Lakeshore had a directory previous to this that's been incorporated as well. So again, that company can enter one profile. They can still be found in that or in the full directory as well. So you can search any one of those directories individually, or you can do an advanced search that searches all of the directories. I was really, really glad to hear when the question was asked, would this tool be helpful to people, that people raise their hands, or otherwise my presentation might have been for naught. So hopefully you'll see some real benefit out of how to use this particular tool. So if you're particularly in the aviation and aerospace industry, looking for a supplier in that particular industry, you'll get at the top of this directory some information about some of the, one of the trade industry associations that we have within the state that might be a source for additional information. And that would be Wisconsin Aerospace Partners, a link to them. That also provides us a market already there to take these suppliers to. As that association, they're all within that industry, they would all use those particular suppliers. So it's our partnering target market industry as well. So you can search by the different manufacturing category by expanding any of the bars. And those companies that have indicated they can serve the aviation industry and make components, parts, and hardware will show up in that particular category. And you'll see the variety of categories of suppliers that go into aviation and aerospace listed for that searching by category. You can also hit the jump to search, and it'll go down to the bottom, which gives you a more dynamic search. And that will also, you'll see on the map, all of the companies' locations that fit within the aerospace and aviation directory. They are listed on the bottom as well by name of company. And then you can search again through a very dynamic search of, say, by location. And within a radius of that. And then you'll get just those companies that are in that particular area. You can also search by certification. And so you might be looking for an aerospace certification, given that it's an aerospace industry. And you'll get those companies and can narrow that down to, those are the only companies within that directory that actually have that aerospace certification. As to some OEMs or tier 1 suppliers, that's extremely important. And if they might be a defense contractor, some of them require certain certifications to even meet the needs. So there's a wide variety of ways that you can use that search. And you can, again, hit the button and search all the directories, which takes you just to the dynamic search page. So you can also join the directory from that particular area. And then going back to just take a look at one of the other directories. We have the energy systems. Our partner with energy systems is MWork, or the Midwest Energy Research Consortium out of Milwaukee. Again, it provides us with an immediate target market to take these suppliers to that is concentrated in that particular industry. Again, you'll see the categories of manufacturing and business suppliers that go into that industry, the search button. Industry news from those particular businesses that might be in this directory will automatically flow into the industry news. So if you're a company and you have received a new certification or you've won an award, you can also enter that into your profile, and that will automatically feed into this particular area. So looking at a profile and what does that look like for a business? This is a recycling firm. A company can enter their logo, or in this particular area, they can enter a picture. It might be of a piece of machinery, it could be their building, it could be basically whatever graphic or image they would like to put there. The logo, it automatically will pull them onto a locator map where that business is located. Shows the directories that they're in, and when you hover over it, it'll give you the name of what that industry is. So if you don't make the association through the graphic, you can still determine what that is. The different categories that they can provide. And because it's a recycling firm, they have a lot of different pieces, parts, and components that they do supply. So you'll see a wide range of categories for this particular business. But you can also, the business can also load a marketing video, as they have here.
Sadoff Iron and Metal Company.
And then the description of the company, the contacts, those expand, company details, their locations, description, again, type of number of employees, what if they're a defense supplier and already qualified as that, the wide variety of information that a company might look for in seeking a supplier. What directories they're in, the markets that they're interested in serving, the categories that they can provide, and categories they're interested in. Some of the information, like the category, what they might be interested in the future in serving, they have the choice of whether they would like that to show or not in their profile. And there are a number of those sensitive areas, such as sales. The company really has the ability to click a box and indicate whether they want that information to show or not. And that goes particularly with importing and exporting. Some are very interested in looking into it in the future, but aren't doing it right now. But that also provides us with some information in terms of what are some of the programming that these companies could benefit from in the future that would help them get into those desired markets or desired areas in the future. The company can also post jobs or a link to their HR page if they're hiring. And they can also post links to company news, or they can put additional company news in these particular areas here that, again, flow into that search page where I indicated there's industry news that flows in there. Now, going back to look at, so the other directories will look quite similar to that. Water industry, we have the trade partnership with the Water Council, which again is a trade industry for those manufacturers who are serving water industry components or industries such as, it's based out of Milwaukee, so you've got beer and the number of industries that make beverages, but you also have a lot of water system capabilities that are also within that, such as sanitary sewer, water supplies to communities, that kind of manufacturing as well. Again, you have the same type of format with this, with the industry news showing up in that particular directory. There's also an internet type of format for businesses to use and gain additional information, such as if there are events that are training programs for supply chain management, cluster reports, a survey participation announcement for looking at sustainability in businesses. It can be basically a number of different educational information, news that would be pertinent to businesses, trends in the industry, that kind of news. And if you have something you want to share with other businesses, you have the ability to post that, and that will then come in to be approved to go live onto the site. As well, as I mentioned, you can also post a request for proposal, request for quotes. And same thing, that will show then on the What's New page, as well as when a request for proposal gets posted, it will send out a notification to those companies that can serve that type of proposal request. Again, you'll get additional company-specific information that flows in out of your profile, such as who's hiring. So if you've posted a position on your company page, those will rotate and flow into this What's New page, as well as the business news also does. Now, one of the other things that we're continuing to develop within the marketplace is also mapping out the breadth of supply chains that we have in the region and in Wisconsin. Because as we looked at WindWorks for the Northeast Wisconsin area and started the directory for that, it quickly expanded to all of the state of Wisconsin. And we've got the same interest in this supply chain marketplace as well. So it's not limited to just the New North region. It is statewide, so any businesses across the state can be part of it. But this tool allows us the great capability of aggregating in almost any way we want and adding a new directory based on that aggregation. So as we get more companies that are within a certain industry segment, we can add another industry segment directory specific to that, such as it might be paper and packaging. Although they can fit within a number of those industry directories, they may be big enough to stand alone and have a separate directory as well, like food and beverage or water, one of those other ones. We also can aggregate by region and geography. So as I mentioned, we also have a lakeshore directory that does aggregate by region. You can view the regular directory in that hooks up and links in with the profiles that a company enters. That profile will flow into this directory just like it does the other ones by them clicking the box that they're in the lakeshore. But this also has another component that shows the broader breadth of the supply chain within that region that goes beyond those companies that have self-entered their information and gone that 15, 20-minute extra mile to enter all of their company profile information. We take and run reports based on NEGS codes to pull out their name, address, telephone number, website if they've got one, and build out supply chains in specific, more defined sectors. So such as on the lakeshore, they've chosen 4 particular sectors that they wanted to build out and find more information about the breadth of the supply chain that they could put in front of other businesses as an attraction, but also, as we heard previously, identify where there are gaps and that it might be advantageous to attract new business into that area that could serve that industry. So this particular tool has the supplier opportunities that feed into that core industry, which is cheese manufacturing, and then the market opportunities that would be flowing out of cheese manufacturing. Again, you can click on those categories and they will expand if there are companies that are in that particular supply category. So when I clicked on that, the paper product, converted paper product manufacturing, you don't see any businesses because that is an area that there aren't NEGS code related businesses that fit in that category. So it might identify there's an opportunity. Here you have animal production and agriculture. Well, we're pretty darn strong in that. Cheese manufacturing, again, it is Wisconsin. So you get a sense of what we can provide out there to certain areas. And the core industry itself will give you an idea of what are the businesses that are specifically making that cheese product that they're selling as an end product. And then you can do that for the plastics product manufacturing, similar to the cheese, works the same way. And you'll see the different suppliers to that industry and where there are gaps that exist. Cutlery, utensils, pots and pans manufacturing is also very large on the lakeshore. And metal fab machine shops is extremely strong. Very heavy concentration in that particular area. So there's the breadth of machine shops and metal fabrication. So we're also building that out for the defense industry based on the NEGS codes and that have supplied Oshkosh and Marinette Marine. And that will have that same dynamic to it. As we get additional interest in enough critical mass in other industries, we would do similar to those particular, for those particular industries as well. So that gives you kind of a quick overview of how the tool works. Any questions on that? Free's good, right? So the sheets that you have in your handouts also give you the URL for entering your company profile. And again, You don't have to be in New North to enter that. You need to be in Wisconsin. It also covers service providers such as financial institutions, professional services, architects, engineering, prototyping. So it's not just manufacturers alone, but all of the supply chain categories that might feed into those particular industries can be entered and served within this. Now our next interest is to take the supply chain marketplace out to those particular industries. Well, we have our partnering industry organizations such as the Water Council and the Midwest Energy Research Consortium. We're working with those partners to take what we have in supply chain offerings and go out of state to others who might also purchase from that supply chain and be an attraction too to saying you might really want to consider being closer to the supply chain because of what it can provide you. So it has a number of different ways to market our region, but also to get direct contracts, transactions into our businesses and have more interaction there. In addition to, within the region, business-to-business connections. Often we think our businesses all know each other, and you might know the names of a lot of them, but quite often you don't know the breadth of capabilities that they all have. So this allows you another way to find out some of those opportunities and what they can provide. So I just want to check on time here a little bit. Any other questions on the marketplace tool? Yes.
Are you able to speak to any specific successes that you're aware of where companies that were involved in that could attribute it to someone searching for that?
Yeah, yes, and it is relatively new. So we started in the fall basically with companies entering their profiles. And it does take a certain critical mass to have it be as effective as you would want it to be. But we have already had requests come into our office saying, can you tell me what tube vendors you have within the region or within the state that I might be able to provide to XYZ company who's inquired. And that came actually through Midwest Energy Research Consortium. They had a client that they were working with who needed some precision tube vendors that could potentially serve the aviation industry. So I went on the marketplace tool, found the ones that were listed in there, provided them to Midwest Energy Research Consortium, gave it to his client. Within hours, those businesses were already contacted for quotes. So it does work. Critical mass is important because it's not as effective if people go on and you can't find somebody in those categories, or if there's only one. That's helpful, but the critical mass definitely helps provide the offerings.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any expectations for those folks who go out there and put their profiles out there that they be, genuine about their capabilities in certain areas? We've all seen directories and into conferences and trade shows where people will say, I can do this or I can do that. In reality, might not have that experience. What's the expectation for those who are putting that data out there?
Yeah, it is somewhat self-monitoring to a degree. I mean, we have it in our approval process, looked at profiles and said, no, you don't do all those things. And maybe you misunderstood how the question was worded. Sure. And particularly, we have found that there is some confusion at this point in terms of entering the category of business that you, or capabilities that you represent. Often those who were entering thought it was who can you serve, not what do you provide. So we're making that clarification so it's clear when they enter the information how you're supposed to answer that particular question. But we do, we required, any profile requires an approval. So we try to do some monitoring in that approval process There is definitely a disclaimer that says we haven't vetted everybody, so we can't vouch for every business that's in there, and you need to do your own due diligence. But we try to be a little bit discerning on if we see something that we know just doesn't really meet what we know they can do. In terms of upkeep, so often we get questions regarding how are you going to update this. Companies will get reminders every 6 months to update their profile. A company can go in at any time and add news, add we're hiring, change their descriptions. And to think about when you're entering a description, you can also search via keywords. So think about how do businesses find you? And as we talk to those trade industries and said, what's the best way for us to be, for you to use us? And they said, well, we need to find you. So you need to be able to be out there where we can find you. And this fits right into that. It's a vehicle for trying to be found, but you have to think about that when you enter your profile. What are those seeking what you do going to be using to look for you? And make sure you put that information in your descriptions. Other questions? We also did have a workshop, and I'm not going to run through the whole presentation, but part of this thinking is in the reason for having multiple industry directories but one profile is to get businesses to think about diversification of their business mix. That you don't want just one customer, you don't want just one industry, because those all go up and down. So the more you can diversify within those, the more stable your company becomes. So we also try to provide information for companies to think about how do I diversify, how do I interject innovation into what I look at for how do I fit into supply chains. And we held a workshop with Dr. Anthony Ross out of the Supply Chain Institute at UW Milwaukee, and he provided us with information about the 5 rules of supply chain innovation and new customers. And I'm not going to run through the detail information, but I'm just going to put the 5 up there for you to think about a little bit. Make sure your company has meaning. What value, what meaning, assistance can you provide to that company? Have a mantra, and so put that meaning into like a 3-word description or mantra that you can get businesses to remember, like Nike's Just Do It, or Jimmy John's Freaky Fast, although that came to bite them a little later. But thinking about what is something short and sweet that customers can remember you by. And jumping to the next curve is really one of those very important elements to think about. Well, you may be very good at this particular quality. What's that next unique element you can add to that jumps you up to that competitive advantage others don't have, or gets you in that door to that business who has a supplier that's doing okay, but you could leap ahead of them. And that takes some willingness to take risks and protect that uniqueness and value. You can't just sit on it and think it's going to always be there, so be sure you put attention to it. And with that, any other questions, information, thoughts you have? Well, thanks for letting me be here. Again, you can aggregate by different areas, so it might be an opportunity for Central Wisconsin that could have another component within that same marketplace and not have to start all over from the beginning. So, thank you.
And Heidi, did you want to add anything to that, or for our region, for Centergy region?
I don't think so at this point.
Okay.
Again, I'm Eric College. I'm the CEO of Wausau Region Chamber of Commerce, and I just wanted to, again, thank you for being here, but I want to remind you that we have a lot of great assets here in the region, and a commitment from all the other chamber executives that are here in the room and those that aren't, that we are working together to support you, and we are the people on the ground that can help make those connections. We want to get out, we want to be present in your businesses, have a great understanding of what you do, because you never know when we're out having a conversation that may spark an idea that, hey, did you know about this company over here that does this, or this company does that? So we want to be that support for you. We're working collaboratively with the Rapid Chamber, the Portage County Business Council, Marshall Chamber, the Wausau Chamber. We're working collaboratively on a number of different areas, including talent, including supply chain. We've got other great partners in the room. NTC is a wonderful partner. The other technical colleges, four-year universities. Everybody's on board here because we want to have the most successful community that we can. So I want to again, make you aware that we're here to help. Call us anytime. I also want to recognize another resource in the room. That's Mark Violante. Mark is with the Wisconsin Procurement Institute, and he's the person for our region that works with businesses, large and small, helping them through the government contracting process, getting set up to do business with the government. You know, how do you become aware of government opportunities? I had worked in my past in business development, worked for a company that was doing some work in the federal space and knew absolutely nothing about it. And through attending the seminars and other things that WPI puts on and working with some of the outreach people like Mark, was able to expand that business in a whole different direction in the federal marketplace that they'd never been involved in. So Mark helps people with both local, state, and federal opportunities. He's a great asset. He's actually physically located in the Wausau Chamber, but he serves the whole area, goes down in Point, knows the area, knows the state and what's going on with the DOD and other agencies to take advantage of. So just wanted to make you aware of that as well. And if there's anything that any of us as chambers can do, please let us know, because we want our community and our region to be successful. So thank you for your time.
Okay, that's going to pretty much wrap up our discussion this morning. I want to draw your attention again to our workshop series that we have for supply chain. If you're interested in seeing one of us, it's also in your folders, so you have some information there. I'd like to thank all of our speakers that joined us today, and specifically I'd like to thank Mary and Bob and Rick and David for their time and their expertise in sharing their stories. Let's thank them again as well. There'll be an online survey coming out just about today's workshop. If you want to see additional information, if you want this to continue on, or what the college and our regional partners can do on this, we'd be happy to hear your feedback and input on what we can do to continue to make this happen. Again, wanted to thank all of our regional partners that are here, again, that have contributed in some way, shape, or form, along with Sarah, who has coordinated a lot of the activities today. So thank you for your sponsorship and activities as well. And finally, again, feel free to stick around and network. You can stay in this room if you'd like to. I know that's a big part of these conferences, is to be done and have a chance to connect with some folks. Grab some refreshments on your way out. And again, thank you so much, everyone, for attending today, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. You too. Thank you so much.